gospel we just heard is a master class of evangelization and conversion. Let me explain. Jesus is on the shore of the lake, and he's with his crowd, he's with his apostles. Peter is there, and he gets into Peter's boat. And then he starts making some commands. He tells Peter, throw your nets for a catch. Peter kind of responds, maybe lackadaisically, probably pretty tired. He said, Lord, we've been doing this all night. Okay, fine. Throws his nets out. No catch in the shallow water. Jesus commands them to take their boats out a little further, out into the deep water. Cast your nets. They cast their nets, and what happens, right? A miracle. More fish than they've ever seen. They've been fishing all night, caught hardly anything. They go into the deep water at Jesus' command. Fish everywhere. So much so, they fill up 2 boats to the point of sinking the boats. It's a lot of fish. So there's a couple spiritual lessons here. Number 1, do what Jesus tells you. Pretty easy. Number 2, though, I think there's a great lesson in just that analogy of the shallow water versus the deep water. I think many times it's much safer to just be in the shallow end. When we get out into deep water, it gets a little more dangerous. But that's also where the fish are. That's also where it maybe is a little more dangerous, but that's also where the adventure is. The possibility of storms, yes, but also the possibility of a big catch. Last night after the 5 o'clock Mass, I visited with a parishioner here. About a year ago, she lost her husband. And one of the things that she's trying to do is to come to terms with this loss. And she decided to join. Here in the parish, we have a little grief support group. And for her, it was a big step to join this group. She didn't want to, but felt called to. She was really scared by it. Who's going to be in it? What are we going to do? Am I going to have to kind of talk about my experience of loss? She came up to me after and kind of grabbed me by the shoulders. She's a lot smaller than me. She grabbed me by the elbows. And she said, for me, the grief group is the deep water. I was very moved by that. For her, she could stay in that shallow end. But for her, she felt the call to move outside of the shallow end into that deep water. So there's a great spiritual lesson there. How many of us are staying in that shallow end when in fact there's great adventure and a great catch to be had in the water that's a little deeper? There's also the great lesson of St. Peter. In response to this miracle, in response to more fish than he's ever seen in his life, to the point of sinking 2 boats, Peter has a realization of his own sinfulness, of his own inadequacy, especially in the face of Christ. Christ is holy. Christ is God. And in comparison to that, I'm nothing. I'm sinful. I'm inadequate. So Peter drops to his knees and says, Lord, depart from me, for I am a sinful man. He pushes the Lord away. Lord, get away from me. Don't look at me. But what does Jesus do? There's a great lesson here for all of us. We're sinful. We are inadequate. We're not worthy. We say it at every Mass. Right before we come forward to receive Holy Communion, what do we say? Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. We know we're not worthy. But Christ doesn't walk away from us. Christ doesn't do what Peter says. He doesn't say, yeah, you know what, you're right, you're pretty pitiful, and you're a sinful man, I'm going over here. No. Jesus actually comes closer. Jesus actually comes to Peter, stays with him, and says, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. Not only is he not afraid of Peter's sinfulness, in spite of that sinfulness, he continues to call him to this great task of evangelization. We're then told that the crowd dropped their nets and they followed him. And we know the story from there. They went out and they preached the gospel to all nations. So Jesus doesn't leave us in our sinfulness. He actually draws closer. He chases after us. There's a great lesson there. Finally, though, I want to just do a little conjecture. Very beginning of the story, Peter has Jesus get into his boat. And I just want you to think about, what if there was no space in Peter's boat? What if Peter's boat were full of junk? What if Peter's boat were full of other people? What if Peter's boat was so full of stuff that Jesus wanted to get in but couldn't? Peter left space in his boat for the Lord. And what happened? It doesn't have to be a lot of space. Jesus didn't need a ton of space. Jesus got in and sat down, and then this miracle starts to develop. But what if there was no space in Peter's boat? What would Jesus have done? Would he have said, look, Peter, clean your mess up here. I got to get on your boat. Would he have gotten in another boat? Would he have left? If Peter didn't leave room for the Lord, this whole beautiful and miraculous story may never have taken place. And so I simply ask you, as we go into our week, is there space in your boat for Jesus? He doesn't need a lot of space. We see time and time and time again when we leave just a little room for the Lord, just a little space for him to come and sit and to be with us, miraculous things happen. Amazing things happen. Is there room in your boat for the Lord? Or is your boat filled with maybe good things like work and school, hobbies, or bad things, the junk of our lives? Is there so much sin in my boat that Jesus can't get in there? We come to the Lord today confident in his love, knowing that he follows us, knowing that our sinfulness doesn't repel him, it actually attracts him. And so I simply leave you with this. As you go through your day, as you go through the week, is there room in your boat for Christ? If not, how can we make a space? How can we make room for the Lord who loves us, who desires to be with us? Is there room in your boat for the Lord?